Warning, this video is going to contain some spoilers for the new DC film, The Flash. So if you have not seen the movie yet, please beware. We might be talking about spoilers. So I want to talk about, on Geek the Movie Talk, I want to discuss The Flash, why it flopped. Because for all intents and purposes, this movie in theory should not have flopped. They brought back Michael Keaton, one of the most legendary Batman performers ever. They had a really good story, but there was some controversy behind this movie because of a couple things. First of all, Ezra Miller's strange behavior and problems with the law, and also the reboots. So we're going to be discussing all of that and more today. Joining me, y'all know when we do these long form discussions when it comes to comic books and comic book movies, Hayden joins in. So he's here. What's up, bro?
Geekdom, it's good to be back. Always excited to talk about MCU, DC, all that stuff. This one's a little bit more of a kind of a weird one, but yeah, I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, man. So I saw The Flash about a month ago, and I was marking out, but I chose not to spoil it because there were scenes in that movie. Like the Christopher Reeve thing looked weird, but it was awesome seeing it. Adam West, the George Reeve Batman, that big scene was just so beautiful. And I was hyping it up to you. I was like, yo, like they kind of pulled a Spider-Verse on us. And I do think that's something that probably needs to be taken into account. I think that Spider-Verse coming out before this movie may have had something to do with, it being a little bit hurt. There's a lot of different factors, but first and foremost, I want to ask you, what'd you think about the movie? What'd you like about it? And because people are saying it's like the best DC movie ever, I don't know about that. I don't think it tops on like Batman '89 or Superman or the Dark Knight trilogy, but
Yeah,
of the
I
new,
don't count those. Those are those. I don't. I consider those kind of pre-DC. Like this is kind of part of the DC EU in my mind.
right?
Whereas those are more of their own thing.
Well, I
But yeah.
still like the Snyder cut more, but I mean, it was good, and they did a version of the Flashpoint story that I think worked. Me being a kid of the '80s, Michael Keaton was there, but I'm asking you though, what'd you think about the movie when you saw it?
It's yeah. So this is kind of a weird one because I really liked the movie. I thought politics aside, and maybe I should start with this disclaimer. Despite really liking the movie, I'm able to put that aside because I fucking hate Ezra Miller as a person. I really find them to be like a truly despicable person who has faced a weird amount of impunity and like lack of consequences for their actions. I
Yes.
get that maybe, this so much was riding on this movie and a lot of money that they kind of had to downplay it or whatever the studio and just kind of release it. But I just want to get that out of the way. Don't confuse my adoration of the movie for permitting the actions or endorsing the actions of Ezra Miller. But
Yes.
I really did think that story-wise, script-wise, direction from Andy Muschietti, who did the It movies, was all really strong. Stronger than we're used to in some of these DC movies, which feel, I don't know, kind of chintzy or lazy in their writing at times, or with a lot of studio meddling. Kind of brain dead at times. The scripts, like the pacing is always kind of weird. Batman vs Superman into the Joss Whedon Justice League, they're always kind of whack. But there have been some strong points. I really love Shazam. That was one of the strongest ones for me. I like Wonder Woman, the original one, a lot, even though I think rewatching it gets a little bit kind of by the numbers as you rewatch it. I like James Gunn's Suicide Squad a lot. I wasn't as over the moon about it as like his Guardians movies. I think those were stronger. But I do think in terms of the DC EU movies, this part of this thing that began with Snyderverse
Yeah.
or
Man of
whatever,
Steel.
and seems to be kind of wrapping up now as they springboard into James Gunn's era. I think this was one of the most tight plot-wise movies. So I was really kind of surprised to see that it had like a mid to low 60s Rotten Tomato score. And that on Twitter, people are dunking on it and clowning on it. And I did kind of notice that a lot of those people would follow up with like, "Yo, I haven't seen the movie yet, but like, I hear it's ass." And so I think
Typical.
so I think that there is some confirmation bias here in terms of the reviews, like at large. I think that it's undeserving of some of that. I think that it's a lot to do with what I think is the elephant in the room regarding why it flopped, and probably my hunch is the major reason, which is Ezra Miller. I really think that people were so turned off by their actions leading up to the movie, the stuff in Hawaii, the weird kind of reports of grooming and like kind of cult leadery behavior and dangerous, and just harassing people at bars and throwing stuff and accusing people of racism and transphobia and all this stuff. I think it just gave people an excuse to not go see it in an era where like people are kind of burnt out already on the superhero thing, or just are looking for reasons to not have to go see another one of these superhero movies. Maybe they start to feel a little bit like homework after a point. But yeah, so to go back to your thing, I really liked a lot of the things about this movie. I thought that Michael Keaton, which I was really unsure about how that would go over because he's older, he hasn't played Batman in a while. He was really strong as Batman. That was an effective role. I thought that Flashpoint was translated pretty well. I'm a big fan of that comic, and yeah, it wasn't as like kind of dystopian and messed up as the Flashpoint comics world is. It was still a cool kind of and I liked I liked some of the jokes that they wrote in, like the Back to the Future thing.
Eric Stoltz.
But Eric Stoltz.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a mystery to me why this movie did well. It's a mystery to me why the reviews were so poor. Why people didn't go see it and it underperformed. I think that had a lot to do with the Ezra Miller thing. And I also think it had a lot to do with the fact that James Gunn just announced basically that the next few movies that DC's got in the pipeline don't really matter so much. Like,
yeah,
a
lot of these movies were shot prior to Gunn taking over. And I think the fundamental problem here, and we'll probably discuss this deeper in another video we're going to do, but I think the fundamental issue here is the fans are basically being jerked around. And I'm not saying it's necessarily Gunn's fault, but DC, ever since Batman v Superman, has done a piss poor job of keeping this entire universe like solid and with a good direction. People talk about Snyder, but at least Snyder had direction. At least he had a plan. He definitely had a plan of where he wanted the story to go. Like it or not. Some of the stuff he wanted was weird, but like it or not. I think that it's unfortunate that the Ezra Miller story got so big because he's really good in this movie. But I also think that even if they had not committed those weird crimes, I don't think Ezra Miller is leading man or leading person charisma. Obviously, I think Ezra Miller did a great job in this movie, but I just don't think that Miller could carry a film. Michael Keaton can, though, and I was really thinking that the old Batman '89 fans would come out to see it, but that didn't happen. Now, something else that we should talk about is the superhero burnout, because this is not the only flop that we've had. There's been a number of flops in the superhero genre for the past, few months, and not just Flash, but also the second. Black Adam and the second Shazam movie completely tanked. Now, I enjoyed Black Adam and Shazam 2. In my review, I think I pointed out, and this is my big reason as to why the movie didn't do so well, that if this movie had come out 5 years earlier, it would have been totally praised. The problem is that we have had so many superhero movies that follow the same formula. They're trying to do that Marvel Comics, Disney comedy that's annoying. They all follow the same exact story beats, beat for beat, with some small modifications. And I think people are sick of it. I think after Endgame, and I was talking to some friends about this, and I'm pretty sure I talked to you about it in a video we did a while ago. I was worried about the bubble popping on this because there are just too many movies. We have Disney Plus shows now. And don't forget, we've also got the Elseworld stuff like The Batman. But the thing is, I want to address something you said about James Gunn. The issue with that is the casual fans who don't know anything about the internet, who don't look stuff up, they're the ones I actually feel bad for, because at least you and I know that Gunn is rebooting the universe with this movie and that he's got direction. But can you imagine being a casual going to see, let's say, the Snyder Cut, and you're seeing Darkseid, so you're thinking, okay, Darkseid's coming to Earth with granny goodness, we're going to have a big war. That's not going to happen. And then you have the tease of Superman versus Black Adam. That's not going to happen. You don't, even if we go back, let's go back.
That's the whole story of the DCE. That's basically been the story of the DC Cinematic Universe. It stops and starts. It stops and starts the whole way. Oh, actually, Cavill's done as Superman. Oh, no, he's not done. He's coming back for Black Adam. Oh, now the whole Justice League cast is off projects now. They're done. Oh, actually, no, they're doing some solo movies with Flash and stuff. Oh, Black Adam is now going to be, in the universe. Oh, but he's not fighting Shazam. In fact, Dwayne The Rock Johnson hates the idea of collaborating with
Right.
Shazam. He thinks it's big enough for Superman. There's so many new every movie feels like a retooling of the direction because the studio was kind of not content with the outcome of the last one, so they're going to kind of rejigger it or attempt some sort of mini course correction with each one. And it feels like now nothing has ever amounted to anything, and it's
Yeah.
been like 10 years of wasted time. And I do feel bad, like, those of us that are nerds that track this sort of stuff, we know that there's somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel with James Gunn. But yeah, it's just, I think the DC feels a little bit pointless right now, the DCU.
Yeah, I mean it's unfortunate because they whet our appetite with things that people want to see, like Dark Side and, like I mentioned, the Shazam Superman fight, and we're just not getting it. It's just not going to happen now. I do like that James Gunn has direction, but it just feels like at any moment it feels like they're going to pull the plug on him as well. Like they don't have a Kevin Feige. They don't have anybody who they trust that can give this direction. But I wanted.
I feel good about James Gunn. I will say I do feel good about his
Me
role
too.
firmly. I think that they're looking for their Feige now finally, and James Gunn's he's a proven director and he's a proven visionary when it comes to this sort of thing. So I do feel good. I feel like he's injecting less of the gritty Snyder, the Snyder vibes that have kind of lingered
The dark
across
vibes.
DCU, the dark vibes, which
Yeah.
can work for the DCU at times, but I think it's more successful in things like the Batman, Joker, where it's really, really kind of well realized. Not this kind of like Michael Bay almost feeling like kind of shallow attempt at being dark. This I like the Snyder Cut, the 4-hour one that was released on HBO Max. I like it. I think I like it despite some of its cheesy direction from Zack Snyder. But I do feel good about James Gunn. But anyway, what were you gonna say?
No. I was just saying that we'll talk about that more in the other video. I wanted to talk about the Flash real quick because I think what we talked about already, Ezra Miller not being a leading person, the crimes and whatnot. Michael Keaton couldn't save the movie, even though it's
And I
too.
also think the CGI, I think that people want a reason to hate on this movie because they're so turned off by Ezra
I
Miller, or
think
they
you're
like
right.
memeing on you. And I think that things like the CGI getting a lot of press for how bad it is gives another people a reason to like meme on the movie and laugh at it, and just another reason to write it off. And I think people are kind of wanting to hate this movie and just getting fed these reasons through Twitter or whatever. And it's just kind of this I don't know, sentiment of negativity towards this kind of pervasive. The other thing I
Well,
think is that there's a little bit of multiverse fatigue setting in, not just superhero fatigue, but
oh
I think
my
this
God.
that
Yes, you're right.
it's losing its specialness rapidly. The whole concept of multiverse and cameos and things, the novelty is wearing off. And then I think the multiverse saga and the Kang and Secret Invasion stuff, or not Secret Invasion, Secret Wars is coming on the horizon for the
And
MCU.
Spider Verse.
Spider-Verse, this multiverse thing
We
is kind
even
of
we
playing
now
like
we even have a Sony Spider-Man universe where they're taking the villains and giving them their own movies, and it's like it really is getting completely out of hand. This goes back to what I mentioned earlier about this superhero fatigue. It used to be that we got 2 MCU movies a year and some other stuff. Now we're getting 3 a year, multiple Disney Plus shows, multiple DC shows. Then we have other stuff on Amazon Prime. It's too much. We are getting too much content, and I don't have enough hours in the day to keep up with all of it, man. I have to go back and finish Invincibles because I never finished it. Like there's too much.
Yep, and it's the law of diminishing returns. The No Way Home cameos were epic, but as time goes on, the more movies copycat that formula, it's just it becomes kind of almost an easy thing to do, like a cynical or manipulative way to like get a rise out of your audience because all you gotta do is just get CGI Nicolas Cage, which I liked the
I
acknowledgement of.
love that Easter egg.
I liked those Easter eggs. It did feel a bit unearned with them all being, and I didn't let the CGI really get to my head. Yeah, I agree, it was a little bit ugly. Actually, it was very ugly, but I thought that some of them were a little bit like, I don't know, maybe it was just fatigue. It didn't land like a Spider-Verse cameo did. Maybe it's because it was all CGI and it was just a couple of headshots of the people, but it felt like, okay, this might be. I was kind of felt it in that scene. I was like, all right, are we getting kind of to the end point of this multiverse cameo thing where they got to kind of start coming up with some new stuff? It was cool because I like DC embracing its history. That's something where DC's at its best. It has goes back to the 1930s, something that Marvel can't really claim, the golden age, you know.
Right.
But I do think that they need to start kind of thinking of more original ways to, or just maybe lay off the multiverse thing until they've got a really good way to do it. Of course, the Flash movie is a good way to do it, but yeah.
Do you think? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that if this movie came out, like let's say 2 years ago, because I'm pretty sure they finished shooting it 2 years ago. If it came out 2 years ago and there was no pandemic, it just came out and there was no James Gunn, they were going to go in the same direction they were going in. Do you think the movie would have been more successful at that point? Maybe prior to all this fatigue and prior to James Gunn, basically all the reasons we're citing as to why the movie may have flopped. Do you think it would have actually done better with Ezra Miller still as the lead, but you know, none of the other drama? Would that have actually helped? Is this a situation where the movie was released because of bad timing, and it wasn't all their fault, but it feels like this movie would have worked. It feels like this movie did enough good things to where it would work for an audience, and it just didn't, and it's weird to me.
I agree. I think that 2 years ago, without all these extenuating circumstances, the movie would have done a lot better. I think with that, I think they've lost a lot of faith with their audience in this kind of whole DCEU thing. I think people are kind of biding their time to see what because also this was viewed, I think, for some people as just possibly a vehicle to reboot the DCU. Like
That
maybe
was
that was
that was the
later.
idea. James Gunn said that this movie would reboot the DCU and start his new
Right,
universe.
and now
But
are they
then
going to keep Ezra Miller? Probably not.
probably not, because it flopped. Not to mention that the post-credit scene or mid-credit scene with George Clooney, we know for a fact that George Clooney is not going to be the Batman from The Brave and the Bold. They're going to recast Batman again, and Batfleck is done, and they're not going to use Robert Pattinson. So this whole thing was meant to be like a joke to kind of troll the audience, like, we got the Batman from the worst Batman movie. But all it does is confuse people. All it does confuse them, because when Brave and the Bold comes out and there's no George Clooney, there's going to be some confusion there. And it's almost like James Gunn and the rest of the crew was like, let's just fuck with them one last time. But I think that may have been a critical error because they've been fucked with too much. And I don't mean that on purpose, but the constant creative changes, the constant changing of directors, the constant start and stop pushes. Like, if I were a DC, like, if I were a casual DC fan, I would be irritated because I'm connected like you are to the movie stuff, like the news, and I'm irritated. I still think that at some point, and this I could be wrong about this, they're gonna do Crisis on Infinite Earths and bring back Cavill and Gal Gadot. I think they're all gonna come back and they're gonna do what Secret War is gonna try and do. So I don't think they're done, because to me that's the only way to save this. I think if you do reboot it with The Flash and you start over again, fans are going to feel like they wasted their freaking time. Because I already feel that way now. I really want to see Darkseid try and get the anti-life equation. Now I'm never going to get it. Those things piss me off. They've teased this way too long. And I swear, dude, if they fire James Gunn and get somebody else in and he reboots it again, like, honestly, you know what? Forget the interconnected bullshit. Just do solo movies like back in the day and just forget about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of they're circling back to some of the same concepts. They need to, I think, figure out what they're going to do. I'm really, really curious to see how this Superman Legacy movie, breathes new life into the franchise or to the whole DCU. But for now, it just feels like they're treading water. What movies are on the slate next? There's Blue Beetle.
We have Blue Beetle, which nobody was even expecting, and James Gunn put it over. And then we've got Aquaman 2, which I think Aquaman 2 wasn't Aquaman 2 like finished in like early 2021. That movie's been in the can forever.
That stuff about it, like that it was like so unwatchably terrible and tested so bad with audiences that they were like, James Gunn was considering just like pulling the plug on it, but they're not going to. They're going to try to like.
I heard the same thing about Batgirl, and the Batgirl thing was weird because Michael Keaton was supposed to stick around in the original ending of The Flash, which I did spoil here on this channel, and I'm very proud of that because I had it before anybody. Keaton was supposed to stick around and be the mentor for the Justice League. They were going to write Affleck out, and he was going to be like the elder statesman, the Nick Fury of the Justice League. And that whole thing has been completely dropped, and not for the better, in my opinion. And that Batgirl movie, I've never even heard of this even happening. They deleted the files from the server, so the movie's literally gone, at least according to what they said. I've never heard of a studio doing this. I don't think there's ever been in the history of cinema a studio as messy as DC, especially considering that they have so many characters. Just having Superman and Batman, just those two, it prints money.
And wasting them on, and so many years of mediocre movies where the actors are verging on quitting after you hear that they're gonna like quit after every movie because they're so like displeased with how they don't feel like they have enough to do, or their scripts are bad, or Henry Cavill was never given a real shot even to be Superman, really. I mean, we had one origin movie, and then he kind of like lightly features in all the rest of the movies, BVS, more so. But yeah, it's I think all these things, this confluence of reasons is why people just don't have a lot of like trust in the DCU.
I can't blame them one bit, dude.
Yeah. And I think people, and I think Warner Brothers is painfully aware of that at this point. They're like, shit, I mean, this is a sinking ship. We need a Hail Mary. We need James Gunn. Like, we need the guy with the most equity of pretty much any superhero director at this point.
I said maybe the Russos. The Russos have a lot of equity.
Maybe the Russos, yeah, or like Christopher Nolan or something.
Right.
But
I feel like if you're out there, and obviously some people are listening to this and they can't separate the art from the artist, I understand that. I agree with you also that it's weird because Flash reboots the universe, but Flash is still Ezra Miller in the post time travel stuff. So it's implied within the body of the film that he's coming back, but he's probably not coming back because of all the real life problems. And I figure they're just going to say, you know what? Let's just forget about it. Let's just drop it, not even explain it. And I think that's their idea. I really do think so. I think they're just going to drop it and that's it. But
I think toxic entity that you got to kind of just cut off. He's a malignant tumor.
It's like somebody put a curse, bro, on them. But I do think people should go out and watch the movie because I had a great time with it.
I think it's a very good movie. And I always kind of stress this. This was something that I think Chris Stuckman or someone explaining to me was that the movie is created by thousands of people or hundreds of people working on the movie.
I've been saying that, man.
And Ezra Miller is just one egomaniacal, bad actor.
Mentally ill. Yeah.
Mentally ill, truly, and needs help. And I hope they do find the help that they need and they can kind of get their feet under him. But so many people have invested, have emotional and career and financial and or whatever, have their careers invested in this movie. And it really is a work of art that is collaborative way beyond just Ezra Miller. And I really hope that Andy Muschietti's, because he's now directing Batman.
Brave and the Bold. Yeah.
Brave and the Bold. I hope that he's still retained for that role because I think he's a good director. And I think he's going to be a good choice for that movie. And I hope that this doesn't, because these studios, they overreact sometimes to these bad blockers. They think it's this one thing. They think it's the other reason. You get stuff like The Rise of Skywalker where they overreact. A bunch of a course correction, and it just. So I hope that this doesn't act as a reflection on him because I think he did a pretty good job. But,
yeah, and also the stuff you talked about, how everything's corporate now. I've discussed this on the Geekdom 101 channel about Dragon Ball. When you have a corporation controlling the IP, it's going to end up being very reactionary instead of it being just like, hey, let's sit down and think this over. But we'll discuss that more in the next video. Thanks a lot, bro, and check out The Flash if you don't want to go, it's fine. I'm sure it'll be on Max in a month or so, maybe even less than that. But it was a good movie, but I still feel like it's going to confuse a lot of people because it's implied at the very end that's going to be Flash, Aquaman, and the George Clooney Batman as the new Justice League. Gal Gadot announced she's not going to coming back to play Wonder Woman. They were supposed to do Wonder Woman 3, and they canceled it.
She said she might come back. I just saw like an update on Twitter today that was like she's actually like. she said that she's open to coming back if it's correct or whatever.
That's
we'll
good.
see if they want. They might just be moving in a forcibly different direction and want to just break free. I don't know.
Yeah, right. We'll see. But yeah, that's it, y'all. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.